Hello, I have Hazel West here today to talk to you guys about writing a good description for your novel. This is an important part of the publication process and something really you need to have even in the writing process. So, heads up, listen up. These tips you're about to receive could save your career. Hazel is a new friend of mine that I've met uh, in the econ this year. I've not yet had a chance to read any of her books, but I've got Blood Ties sitting on my Kindle waiting for me, and I am very much looking forward to it. Over to you, Hazel.
Writers, the day will come when someone will ask you what your book is about, when you have no answer. But it's not this day. This day, we write a synopsis. The synopsis is the part of writing and publishing a book that we all seem to dread the most. The typical length of a cover synopsis is around 300 words, and it may seem daunting to have to sum up a 50 to 100,000 word novel into 300 words. Today I'm going to show you a basic outline to make writing what easier. Step 1 is characters and setting. Today I'm going to be using a synopsis that I wrote for my book Blood Ties to show you how I formed a synopsis in general. So, first step is characters and setting. Setting your scene is definitely important as the first step. The reader wants to know what kind of book they'll be picking up and whether it's a fantasy set in an imaginary land or a mystery set in Victorian London. It's important to make sure the reader has no false assumption as to what they'll be reading. The characters are also something you want to introduce as soon as possible, since they are the most important part of your story. Then your reader will know whether they're reading a story about a 12-year-old girl or a sardonic homicide detective. There are two ways you can go about doing this, and it really doesn't matter whether you introduce the characters or the setting first, as long as both are established within the first 100 words of your synopsis. So, what I did first was the setting and then the characters. And I will read you the first part of my synopsis from Blood Ties, which is, in an Ireland that mixes high kings, fairies, and modern warriors who drive fast sports cars, Kieran, a descendant of the famous warrior Finn McCool, bands together with a company of young warriors from the legendary Nafina. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the setting of this book is, which is kind of a modern, sort of alternate historical perspective of Ireland, and sort of introduces the fantasy element that there are fairies, and also that it is a retelling of the Finn McCool legends. So, and it also introduces my main character, Kieran McCool, who is a young warrior who is going to be going on a mission with some people that he collects later in the story. The whole point of a story of any genre is resolving the conflict that is posed, whether that be the designated baddie or the more personal and character-driven issue. You need to tease at what sort of obstacles your characters are going to come up against within the course of the novel. Think about the central conflict of the story and sum it up. Conflict in literature is summed up in three categories: man against man against nature, and man against himself. Is it a major villain out for your hero? Has your main character been stranded in the middle of nowhere? Or does your heroine have to work through some inner insecurities to be able to perform in her band? Whatever your story may entail, knowing exactly what the conflict is an important part of writing your synopsis. In my story, Blood Ties, the next section of my synopsis goes like this. The company goes on a quest to recover their missing family members who were captured by the goblins in a shaky peace treaty between the two kingdoms. Kieran and his companions must figure out not only how they are going to rescue the prisoners, but also how they are going to get through the mission without killing each other. So that actually establishes two conflicts, one being the typical big major conflict, which is them having to rescue the prisoners from the Goblin Kingdom, and this kind of secondary conflict, which is the fact that a lot of the people who are in this company don't necessarily get along, and that means they're going to have to work through that as well. After your conflict is established, you need to pitch to your reader how it might be resolved, thus the promise of resolution. Obviously, you don't want any spoilers here, but you have to give a promise of action as well. What gives the hero the courage to pick up his sword? Or what event could cause a character with emotional or psychological issues to start healing? This is a delicate one because you want to tease to something more without giving anything away. In the story, it's probably a singular event that changes the course of the story. You don't want to tell too much about this at all in the synopsis, but hinting at what might go wrong or what might help the hero to overcome his own weaknesses gives the reader a little something to look forward to in the story. In my synopsis for Blood Ties, I write, through trial and error, running battles, unexpected friendships, and daring escapes, Kieran and his company come face to face with the Goblin King himself in a final battle that will decide the fate of all involved and of Ireland itself. So it kind of gives you a little bit of tease as to what might happen later in the story, and also how it's like raising the stakes, essentially, like saying what could go wrong and whether or not that actually will happen in the book. You're just gonna have to read to find out, and that is what will snag your readers. There's a couple other fun things you can do with your synopsis. Whether you choose to do them or not is up to you. Taglines aren't necessary, but they can be a good snag for readers who are just glancing at a book. Kind of like what they do on movie posters in the movie theater. There are several different kinds of taglines you can use, and whether you put them on the top of your synopsis or even on your cover, that depends on what you really like to do. For Blood Ties, I use a normal tagline, which is kind of just a simple breakdown of the story. And I used 6 warriors, 7 prisoners, 1 mission. So it's kind of just a quick snag that anyone who's like, oh, hey, I like warriors and this sounds cool, like a questy sort of book, that would interest those kind of people. For mine, it was just kind of 3 phrases that tie into the plot and give the reader a little preview of what they can expect. Another kind of tagline you can do is quotes from the book itself. Sometimes it's fun to give the reader a little snippet of what they can expect from the story. Throw in a couple good lines from the book to set the scene and draw the reader in by making them want more. Choose wisely and make sure that the quotes you pick are a good representation of the story as a whole. A third kind of tagline you can use is a short introductory narration. Instead of quotes or action scenes, maybe a short narration, sort of like a mini prologue, will work, especially for more impactful, character-driven stories. This is what I used for my book, On a Foreign Field, which is a historical drama about an Englishman who is captured by William Wallace's army in the Scottish Wars for Independence. And the one I used is, I've come to the conclusion that a man without a cause is nothing. This was a quote that I used in kind of the prologue forward of the story, where my main character was kind of giving a short narration about the story in general, like as if he were writing it as an older man. So there are some quick and easy tips on how to write a short synopsis. I wish you all the best of luck on your current or future writing projects, and I hope that this was able to help you learn to craft a synopsis a little easier, because you don't have to be afraid of them. Okay, everyone, happy writing. Bye.